at Goucher for about 2.5 years. I was kind of an overachiever and would take like 19 credits a semester. And then I definitely took that suggestion of studying abroad very seriously, even though it wasn't required for my class, and got a whole lot more credits there. So I was able to graduate early, which saved me a lot of money. It was great. But during my time at Goucher, I was very involved. I was manager of the Gopher Hole. I think I was the youngest manager ever of the Gopher Hole. At least at the time, as a sophomore. So that was very exciting. And I was social chair, put on dances. I was like the one who initiated comedy nights at Goucher, which I know was then featured on the show, what was it? Crashing. On HBO, so I was very proud of that. The Goucher Comedy Nights was featured there. So I definitely very involved. Got to know everyone. I was a comm major with a business minor, so it was me and all the lacrosse players.
I'm a business major. I understand.
Yeah. I had wanted to be a TV producer. I kind of, I went into college not knowing what I wanted to do, saying, what are my passions? I really liked watching TV. So mainly focusing on taking a lot of those courses, the video production courses, the comms business courses, to learn how to do that. And then when I did study abroad, which is why I think study abroad is so important, I realized it expanded my horizons and made me realize I have other passions. I got very involved in like the environmental film festival there, very into sustainability, and kind of came back and was like, there's other things out there. I don't need to, especially internships in the entertainment industry can be very taxing, and at the time a little bit predatory. I think they've gotten a little bit better with paying in the time since. So that kind of gave me an eyesight to think of like, oh, there's other things I could do. And I didn't know what that was going to be at the time, but it kind of got my wheels spinning in terms of, where do my passions lie? What do I like to do? I've gone through many career changes. Finally really stick to the one I found that I love. And they've all built upon each other. I think one of the books that's really stuck with me is Lean In, where Sheryl Sandberg says that your career is not a ladder, it's a jungle gym. And I 1000% agree with that. And so, from Goucher, like I said, I graduated early. So I was basically said, hey, I have 2 more classes left. I'm going to take them back in California, save some money, and you can mail me my diploma. So, socially, Goucher was maybe not the exact place for me. I've heard that it has also gotten a lot better in those regards as well. So I'm very happy to hear that. The Athenaeum was still being built at the time that I was there. I came home, didn't know what I was going to do, and got a job at the Apple Store the week I came home from studying abroad. It was a fill in gap, but it really taught me customer service skills, selling skills, negotiation skills, really things that I use on a daily basis. So I was actually really thankful to, and actually, getting Apple stock is probably more than I'll ever make in any of my careers. So that was actually probably my most lucrative job to date, surprisingly. So worked there for a while. Like I said, I think that anybody who works in, whether it's customer service or food service or anything like that, really get amazing experience that is going to look great on your resume going forward and give you a leg up. So I don't think you need to get into what you're going to do right away, because I think, after college, you still need to kind of learn some skills, learn what's out in the world. And from there, that's kind of when I went back, looked at, that passion of sustainability I had, and looking back at my childhood, what did I really love to do? I loved to um, volunteer. I was president of the Red Cross Club in high school. I was really involved in these corporate or these social responsibility type organizations. And so I went back and got my MBA in nonprofit management, thinking, okay, this is, I didn't realize you could be more than a lay leader, that you could actually make a job out of nonprofit. This is what I want to do. So I went back, got my MBA in nonprofit management, and then realized that nonprofits are really bureaucratic and you don't get paid very much. And but what I loved about it was the corporate social responsibility piece of it, and wanted to see where that could take me. So and that was going back, that was the recession. That was about, like I said, 2008, 2009, or sorry, 2010, by the time I went back to school. And so coming out of that, I got a job in advertising, because, kind of going back to that comms major, really felt like I was not being, having ever been a manager, but having an MBA, you kind of can get stuck in between. Like I said, didn't want to go back into that nonprofit world. Got a job at a full service ad agency. Lexus is their main client. And so I was doing finance. And it was more of a, like, I need a job right now. It's hard to find a job. But it was great because it gave me line of sight to every different aspect that makes that business run, whether it was sales, marketing, business development, event coordination, UX design. Production. I got to know every aspect of that business, and I would take the time and I would, ask for informational interviews. I would, take friends out to lunch and coworkers out to lunch and say, can you tell me what you do? Is this something I would like? And a lot of times I would see things where, like, I'm a really organized person. Project management, that's definitely a fit for me. And I would go out to lunch with someone in the project management team, and they'd be like, Sarah, I know your personality. You might be really organized, but you'll be bored as hell, And so getting to know, learning the day-to-day of everyone's job and what people do, it's just not something that you experience in college. And I think more and more with so many different new industries coming out, I think there is more interest in learning at a younger age and earlier on, and taking those informational interview opportunities. But I would definitely recommend taking that opportunity, figuring out what are those jobs that you never even knew existed in different industries. So I think that was like a really important lesson that I learned. And through that, like I said, kind of going back to that lean in, is that Sheryl Sandberg also says, find the gap in the company you're working at. What is the white space? Where can you use your talents and your skills to help them build on something that they didn't know that they needed help with? And that's where I really focused on their corporate social responsibility program. They had a lot of volunteer initiatives, but no real cohesive strategy. How was it helping their business development, their retention, their recruitment, their PR, did they have one strong message that they were putting out, and a mission and an intention behind the goals of their program? And so I put together a whole program for them that I just took upon myself to do all the research and went to the president of the company and said, can I present this to you? Definitely took the initiative to do that, presented it, and they were very, very excited about it. I ended up doing a dual position where I was doing my position, but they allowed me to take some time away from my job, any extra time that I had, as long as I was prioritizing my job, to put this in place with kind of the guarantee or the hope that it would turn into a full-time position. After about 9 months of finding out that there were some budget cuts, and that it was never going to become a full-time position, that is when I decided it was time for me to break from that and explore something new. And I think that's really important to kind of know when you go into something, when, you know, not to have loyalty to anything, when it's time to separate or depart, that you don't owe anyone anything, and because they don't feel the same way about you, and to do, you know, do what's best for you when you've hit that, you know, that point of how much you can contribute and can learn. So I kind of went back to those study abroad roots that Goucher had given me, and I studied abroad in Tel Aviv. I felt like that was the place that gave me the start of my insight of learning new things about myself. And so I, you know, quit my job and took 3 months and went back to Israel and just spent some time chilling on the beach and reflecting and figuring out more about what I wanted. And, you know, a lot of what I figured out was that Los Angeles was not the place for me. And where I wanted, you know, my community to be, my career goals to be, I wasn't finding the answer in LA. So I packed up my car and drove to San Francisco. And, you know, I felt like it was just more, I'd be able to find my community, which then in turn would kind of be able to give, you know, guide me towards career-wise what I could help with and what I could do. And that's where I serendipitously was reading a magazine that had an article. I was doing a vision board. I highly recommend. I know this is like cheesy. I wasn't really into vision boards or vision journaling, but it's actually what has brought me into my last few jobs. So I actually am a huge proponent of that. And I was doing a vision board for a retreat that I was planning. And I opened up a magazine and there's an article about this brand called Regrained. They were making snacks out of the grain from brewing beer. So it was beer, baking, and sustainability, which at the time happened to be my 3 passions. I just gotten into home brewing. I was a big baker. I was writing a blog called Bakes and Brews, you know, and going back to that sustainability piece. And I cold emailed them, found out we actually had some mutual friends in common, and they were in San Francisco, and I was their first hire. So that's what really introduced me to this crazy world of food and especially packaged food and entrepreneurship. And through that, that was like a really great introduction. I was wearing many hats. Being part of a startup was, you know, really eye-opening and interesting, and I learned a ton. It was basically like getting another MBA. You know, and I think there's ups and downs to being in a startup. I think a lot of times you can get, you know, really passionate people and a lot of excitement. But at the same time, there's a lot of processes that are still being put in place. And you need to have a lot of patience, a lot of, you know, you have to be prepared to feel like you are on your own or you're wearing a lot of different hats. I'm the type of person, I love working with a team. It's really important for me to collaborate as a team. And I think that startups could definitely have that culture and that feel, you know, but ultimately you don't have the same access that you might in a larger company. You know, I've worked at big corporations, you know, first employed a startup and then middle, where you kind of have a hybrid of both, wearing a lot of hats, but still getting support. So, you know, I think it's definitely like a personality thing. It's one of those things that a lot of times you have to learn what you like through a couple different jobs and figure that out on your own. It's kind of a hard advice piece to give because I think everyone is a lot different in that regard. So I know this is a really long story.
It's okay. We're getting to good information.
Yeah. And so I was at this startup, and what I really fell in love with was the packaged food industry. It's a great industry. It's people who just want to feed each other. Like how, you get really wonderful, friendly, hospitable people. It's a community in its own. And I would go to trade shows, which very sad right now with COVID. Trade shows are not happening, but trade shows are probably the best part of this particular industry. They're not always that exciting in other industries, but in food, it's just thousands of booths of free samples and great people. So that's really fun. But I would go to these shows. I would meet a lot of different people, and I was saying, well, how can I actually create community? How can I keep in touch with these people? I don't want to grab their business card. A lot of different awesome founders, different brands that we could have really shared knowledge, advice, etc. There's a lot of really intricacies to this industry. And so I basically took everyone's business card and I threw it into a Google listserv. I created my own Google listserv that has turned into something completely in and of itself, and has now gone on for 5 years and really grown. And there's been a lot of offshoots on Slack and on Facebook and other modules of ideas like this, where brands are getting together and really giving each other advice. One thing that's really unique about the one that I started is it's only brands. So in this industry, there's brokers, there's retailers, buyers, lots of different aspects of investors. And this is a brand only group. So there's a lot of honesty and transparency that there might not be in a similar affinity group, that would, where they might be, a lot of times when a brand is looking for investment or something, they might be a little shy about sharing exactly what's going on with their business, their struggles, because they don't want to, show that weakness that I think is really important to show in order to grow as an entrepreneur. So I started that, and, through that community building experience, I found a job running the Chobani incubator. So Chobani has this really cool incubator that helps startup businesses get to the next level, businesses that share their values, what they call their DNNA, delicious, nutritious, natural, and affordable or accessible. And, really helping minority brands, brands with women founders, LGBT, veteran, people of color, how can we help these brands that maybe don't have the same access to resources and capital that a lot of other brands in the industry do? So, helped run that for 2 years, 4 different cohorts, a lot of amazing businesses that I helped grow, help learn about everything from marketing to sales, operations, introducing them to retailers, etc. And, got to basically, be part of their success. And so that was very exciting. And, recently, as many people have, I, some budget cuts, the position was eliminated. And that kind of got me on my next journey of what's next and what makes sense. And, I think that you could have a great and growing career and still hit a point where you could still kind of question what you're doing or be scared. And I think a lot of people are going through that right now, are going through figuring out, what is next for me? Is it time for a change, or is it time, or how can I grow? And so for me, it was a lot of looking back at, do I want to go back to those nonprofit roots and see what's there for me? What am I maybe missing out on, or do I want to keep growing within this industry? So took me about 6 months, with COVID and everything, to find the right fit. Like I said, definitely ups and downs, definitely opportunities that I was probably, overqualified for. You feel a little desperate when you don't have a job. And I think that, seniors are going to be finding this in a couple months, same as I did when I came out of Goucher and the recession. It's a really scary time. You know, and I think you can go about it different ways. I don't think in the same regard that there's, you know, I think it's to each his own as far as what makes sense. I think that this is a time for learning and a time where there's a, you know, flexibility and a lot of, you know, ways that you can talk about your journey that aren't going to seem weird. I think a lot of people are, especially early on in your career, you're really worried about all the different moves you make because you don't want to hear, oh, you're all over the place, or what do you really want, or why did you do this? And for someone who's been all over the place, I think it's important to have a through line of a story that you can tell, but it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be a ladder up. So for me, my story is how much, you know, is relationship building and corporate social responsibility. So everything I have done has that through line that you can tell in my resume now. Maybe, you know, further back it was difficult to tell, but in my resume now you can tell, oh, this girl really cares about, she cares about the environment, she cares about people, she cares about, you know, like giving back and B Corps and all that. So those are, that's my through line, even though, and I'm pretty industry agnostic. So I think sticking to your values is more important than sticking to a career path, or a certain industry path, and finding out what you really like to do. So, yeah, so now I just got a new job. I am category manager for National Coop Grocers, and that is basically I make the decisions about frozen food and body care that go into all the different co-ops around the country. It's a really basic way of saying what I do, but it's really exciting to be on the other side of this industry. I was on the brand side. I was always the one helping sell into these retailers, and now I get to be on the other side and help the brand succeed by, you know, being in more of a position of power in the industry. And, you know, I really like being able to be that liaison of translating. I understand what the brands are going through and what their challenges may be, and I understand what the retailers' needs are and how they could partner together. And a lot of times that, you know, there's a real gap in communication there. So I think that my experience on being on one side and now being on another is really valuable to both my organization as well as to the brands that I'm engaging with. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
It's interesting to see sort of the progression that your career path has had. You said like starting at the Apple Store to being where you are. There is sort of a linear transition of like, this is what I care about, this is the kind of skills I'm really great at, and this is how I market that, even though I'm able to bounce between industries pretty easily. Did you find that there were like certain qualities or skills you wanted in? You mentioned you really did like working in a team. Were there specific qualities or skills you wanted in the teammates that you were working with that was important to you when you joined a new organization?
Yeah, I don't know if it would be skills, more values of empathy. You know, I think every job I've been in, kind of my through line is it's just blank. It's just computers, it's just cars, it's just yogurt, it's just groceries, you know. And I think if you think about, I'm not a heart surgeon, you know, it's not the end of the world. You can work really hard, but still know that still not get stressed about things maybe not going right, about the way you communicate, the way you put out fires, the way you know, I want to know that if I have a problem, I can be really open and honest with my boss and my team and not feel like I'm going to be chastised, not feel like I can't communicate or tell them if there's a problem. So to me, that was really important. Just having a lot of autonomy, being part of the team, but also being trusted and not micromanaged was really important for me. These are all things that I've learned from, you know, issues with other jobs, which that's part of the process, you know. And I will go back to saying that like you said, and like I said, like you can see the through line, but that's 2020, hindsight 2020. In terms of, I probably through most of my early jobs panicked about what my, hearing a million times over that it didn't seem like I knew what I wanted. My story was all over the place. That I couldn't be trusted. I think that I did spend, a good amount of time at each of these jobs, about 3 years at some of them. And that's nowadays with this generation is considered loyalty. So that definitely worked in my favor. Again, like I said, surprisingly, the Apple thing, definitely worked in my favor as well. So yeah, I definitely think that, going back, that not to have anxiety about where you are, because clearly you can be here now and talk about where you've come from, and it's a great story, and people find it much more interesting and compelling. And I think I have become when I've interviewed the top finalists or ultimately the hiree because of my circuitous career path. The reason that I got into was the hire for Chobani Incubator was not because I was the salesperson at a startup. It was because of my circuitous career path and all the different elements of all the different jobs I had that I brought to it. Same thing with this job. The reason there were a lot of I've only been in this industry, this is like a bit of a humble brag, but I've only been in this actual industry for 4 years. And then this is a role that somebody normally would have been in the industry for a lot longer to get this role. So like I said, the reason that I was chosen was because of my previous experience. So when you see on a job board that they want a certain amount of experience, you can ignore that. Like that is just something that HR needs to put on. But ultimately, it's about your cumulative experience that you're bringing.
Good to know. And I think it's also important that you highlight that the years of experience they suggest aren't necessarily the same for what everyone can bring. Your skill set can be transient between industries. So just because you've only been in this in a short time doesn't mean your skill set from the others don't actually come with that as well. And I think people coming out of college need that right now a little bit too, because we're entering a very weird job market. And like you said, it's kind of in a recession similar to when you exited college. You gotta figure out what you can brag about yourself on and make sure you're showing that, not the, oh, I've only been doing this for 6 months. So I'm really glad that you touched on that. I also wanted to know just before, because I want to be mindful of time, were there any specific things or advice you would give to our students between entering the job market now or just general what they should be doing as an undergrad at Goucher to prepare them for transitioning into the workforce?
Yeah, I would say, so there's a couple things. There's a lot of programs now that are really trying to introduce different people to the industry. I just helped a brand called Partake work with historically Black colleges and universities and helping juniors with a program understanding the ins and outs of the food and beverage industry, because that's an industry where that group of people is not as represented, and want to understand why and help them learn about the industry. So there's other people and places that are running these types of programs. And then just like I said in the beginning of the interview, informational interviews, just like don't be afraid. I take LinkedIn request educational interviews from students all the time. You want to be really mindful of people's time. It needs to be the right thing, and you need to come at it, I think, without the ask, if you go into it without thinking, oh, I might get a job offer from this, but I just want to learn, that I think that's my biggest takeaway. My biggest recommendation is come at everything with you want to learn, or you want to, just work really hard, and that's when opportunities, will come at you. It's every opportunity that's come at me has been pretty organic, and not something that I've lobbied for in terms of being really salesy. And I think that's important as well.
That's good to know. And thank you for sharing that. Before we go, is there any last things you'd like to share or things you just want to get out there?
Nope, that's it. I mean, if anyone wants to contact me on LinkedIn or anything, or talk about the food industry, or is an entrepreneur and is interested in maybe like has a food idea and wants to get in the industry, I might tell them to turn the other way and run as fast as possible. But I'm happy to work through that with them, or let anyone know basically what this industry is all about, because it really it's a hard one, but it's a fun one.
Yeah. I'll definitely make sure to share information if any students reach out to me and are interested, and make sure that we include that on our site as well. Thank
Awesome.
you again for joining us today. This has been great. And it wraps up the end of a very good virtual coffee chat series. So thank you a lot.
Awesome. Wonderful.
Have a great day.
You too.